So, ladies and gentlemen, now we'll be having our auspicious chief guest and keynote address by Dr. Harinder Singh Oberoi, Director 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐿 𝐾𝐰𝐚, our honorable chief guest. All over to you, sir.
A very good morning and namaskar to everyone. Thank you, Soumya, for such an elaborate and lavish introduction of mine. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. And thank you, organizers, thank you, partners, thank you, associates. And in fact, it's so delightful to see the who's who of food industry, especially the ones who are dealing with nutrition, nutraceuticals today here with us. I'm sure there are going to be few startups too. There'll be few students, people from industry, people from government sector. So it's a pleasure for me to welcome you all to this summit. And I would start by saying that we are what we eat. If we are what we eat, then I think it becomes the responsibility of us as scientists and academicians, FSSA as a regulator, government think tanks, Niti Aayog and others, food industry, FPOs, to ensure that the consumers get a healthy food, affordable food, nutritious food and a safe food. This industry, ladies and gentlemen, food industry is growing at a very fast pace. I think there were times of biotechnology, BT, IT will move on for some more time, but FT is going to sustain for the simple reason that we can't survive without food. You can afford to sleep without a mobile phone in your hand. Like normally, now the habit is like before you go to bed, we have a phone in our hand, and the moment we wake up, the first thing we look at is the phone. But something which you cannot survive is food. Now, though there are different figures which talk about the growth of this food sector. There are figures which say that the food sector is growing at about 8.8%. Some reports say that it's growing at about 12%. But I'm sure that by end of about 2030 or so, this sector would be around nothing less than 6 lakh crores. So the responsibility is the onus is on all of us here to ensure that we do a little bit for this sector, whatever best we can do. And that too, in a very ethical way, in a way which helps the sector to grow. There are many challenges, and these challenges start from the farmer's field. And the only problem which I see is because having worked with the ICAR, Ministry of Agriculture, farmer is part of the supply chain. FPO is part of the supply chain. But he may not be an integral part of the entire value chain that we see today. We talk about foods, we talk about food processing, we talk about making our foods more nutritious, we talk about making our foods more palatable. But the problem is we have not seen the raw material quality, the raw material ingredients that we get. I think one of the problems that industry faces is getting the quality raw material. And to be very honest to all of you, when I was with 𝐒𝐻𝐿 Bangalore, we saw that there was a need to develop processable varieties of tomatoes. Today also, the tomatoes that we get in India, they are not suitable for processing because we never thought about producing processable varieties at all. Our focus was always on the yield, the productivity, to get more grain, to get more fruit, to get more vegetables. And then there's a problem with the industry because in order to convert tomatoes into tomato paste, which has 6 or 6.5 degree bricks to 27 degree bricks, this requires much lesser energy, this requires much lesser cost and process to get, to bring it to 27 degree bricks. But whereas if my tomatoes have only about 3.5 degree bricks, I would need to concentrate that juice that I'm getting by about 7 times. Whereas I would do it by 4.5 times when I get varieties which have about 6.5 TSS. The other thing was the lycopene, the color that you get. And then the insoluble fractions. You will see a tomato sauce, tomato ketchup bottle, you just roll it down and you find very hard to push the ketchup out of the bottle. And then you would see another brand wherein the moment you put it on the plate, then you can see the entire plate spread out with the tomato sauce, ketchup. And the reason behind that is because nobody thought about the ratio between the soluble part and the insoluble solids. So whenever we develop those varieties, and that's the reason why most of the tomato paste that we get in the country today is imported. We get from China, we get from California, we get from Spain. So there's a dire need to educate our farmers to help this industry to grow processable varieties. I know this is not the pitch that this particular forum would be looking at. Through this forum, I would like to enlighten trigger some of the minds in our government sector and in the research, in agricultural research, that it's time for us to develop processable varieties, especially for fruits and vegetables. And same is the case with the orange concentrate that we get. Most of it is being again imported from Brazil and Spain. And we pay, huge import taxes and import the cost for importing that. Second thing, our supply chains are very fragmented. For the simple reasons, you have farmers which have got, which very low land holdings, and the FPO concept, which government has come out with, is helping. And the live example is the Sayatri Farmer Producer Corporation. They have done wonders. And now looking at them, I see there is another northern mega farmer producer organization coming up in north. There is one in Telangana. So these are slowly picking up. That's a good sign for the country, because then you will have assured raw material supply of a uniform quality that is desired. The other challenge is the transportation. We still are, a country which produces a lot of carbon emissions, and it's important for us to use renewable energy to a maximum possible extent. So, can we use solar power? Can we use wind power? Those are the things to be seen. And NIFTM recently, like we were at World Food India. I'm sure that most of you would have visited World Food India 24. It was a real spectacle which was organized by my ministry, and we were part of it, being part of the Ministry of Food Processing Industries. And I was involved in curating all the technical sessions and the theme pavilion that you could see there. So we did play our part, and there we had put one vehicle called Sarthi. That's nothing but a vehicle which can be used for transporting of fruits, vegetables. You will say, it's a normal vehicle. Yes, it's a very normal vehicle. It's just a container which is mounted on Mahindra's chassis. But it had sensors for carbon dioxide, it has sensors for ethylene, it has sensors for temperature, it has sensors for humidity. So when you're transporting, and I'm sure all of you would have seen the vagaries of weather, all of you would have seen the prices of tomatoes and the other vegetables shooting up, especially during the monsoon season in North India, and we get most of it from South or Maharashtra. So when the material is coming, and our farmers are not educated, and as again I'll come back to the possible varieties, because if you look at the Californian varieties of tomatoes, 𝐒𝐮𝐧 is one company, and everybody would have tasted the 𝐒𝐮𝐧 ketchup and sauce also, which has 57 processable varieties. And they do harvesting of this tomatoes in just twice. So one go, about 80% tomato is harvested, and in the second go it's about 15-20% which is left over is harvested. So when in India we have 7 or 8 pluckings, and the farmer doesn't know which particular stage is ideal and optimum for table purpose, for market, for processing. So as a result, it's a mixed bag. You have all sorts of tomatoes. They are pink also, they are over mature also, they are red also, they are ripened also in one particular basket. So when you're transporting those, say from Kolar in Karnataka, or from Telangana to Delhi, it takes about 3 to 4 days for a big truck of about 10 tons to reach here. And 25 to 30% of tomatoes is lost, or any vegetable or fruit is lost, and that's a huge post-harvest loss. What we are doing is, it's a criminal loss to my mind. Simple reason that we are losing the precious produce that a farmer has produced. We are losing the nutrition that the particular vegetable and fruit has, and we are also adding on to the carbon emissions. So, so this was devised that I give every the controls of this sensors. Sensors are, they are integrated into with an IoT system with actuators. So a person sitting in Kolar who has sent his truck knows that what is the temperature, what is the carbon dioxide, what is the ethylene content inside the vehicle, so that he can take a decision whether this vehicle should reach Delhi Azadpur market or Ludhiana in Punjab or Kolkata in West Bengal, or should I liquidate the entire produce somewhere in Hyderabad or Nagpur. So now, there is another institute in Sonipat, that's Triple IT, Indian Institute of Information Technology. They are partnering with us to provide, to integrate AI with it, so that we can get to know what is the market price of the particular produce in the nearby market, rather than we going for a mathematical model. So, these are the kind of challenges. So these are and then what we have done is we have put solar panels on top of the vehicle. Those solar panels are not for the refrigeration system that's inside. And then it's very important to have, different temperatures and humidity conditions of fruits and vegetables. Fruits thrive well at about 12 to 15 degrees, whereas vegetables require about 5 to 7 degrees temperature with high humidity. So you can't, have a mixed bag. You can't put all the eggs in the same basket, because you have a fruit which is producing ethylene, then you have a vegetable for which ethylene is detrimental. And that's the reason why you provided with a small box at the bottom in refrigerators also to store vegetables, because you're building up humidity there. And the solar panels are in fact are used to run the internal the air circulation and the sensors, the other mechanisms. But we are also working on to see that if we can use the solar power even for refrigeration, at least partly. Now, so similar kind of interventions are required in the country to have these kind of systems. And one of the most important, because I'm an academician and scientist, though I worked with a regulator also, I was part of the regulatory team. If I have to throw open the area, I'm sure there are a few startups. Are there startups here also? We have startups? Yes, I can see a few of them. There are a lot of challenges that startups face, and there are a lot of challenges that startups throw open also. They have brilliant ideas, but translating those ideas into practice is a challenge. And I would request the ones who are here with us and the ones who I interact with us is, don't look at shortcuts. Startups these days have got this tendency, because there are about 3,000 startups which are supported by DPIIT, who are DPIIT registered startups, food startups I'm talking about. But internationally, what I've come to know from the startups themselves is that India is losing its sheen. India is losing its brand, and people are, some of the startups have brought disrepute to our country because they go for shortcuts. They just get an idea, start up with something, show the valuations, and then offload entire stake, then move on. So that is not the intention of government. The government's intention is to handhold you, so that you develop, you are technically mentored by institutes like NIFTM, you get incubated with us, develop a product, be there with us, try to improve upon that, launch the product in the market, go for more horizontals, go for more SKUs, and think, what can be done. The major challenges the food industry today faces, one is the taxes that I can't talk about, because I'm not an expert in taxes. Yesterday I was attending a beverage roundtable where the principal DG of GST was there, who was trying to resolve some of the issues which the industry has. But from the regulatory perspective also, there are challenges which even the regulator faces. Regulator also he also walks a tight rope when it comes to various things, because this country has, if you look at the food sector, it's a highly unorganized sector. The organized sector is only about 20 to 25%. Rest of it is unorganized. As a result, there are very small players who are operating in the system. I would not want people to refrain from eating samosas. One second. But can we not think about having samosas with less oil? Can we think about modification that we do to the maida in a way and to the oil that we use that there's less absorption and we start eating little less of it? See, when you say talk about high fat, sugar and salt, fat is also important. I need cholesterol to synthesize vitamin D. I need sugar to trigger off my metabolism. I need salt to maintain my electrolyte balance. These foods will have these, but then we need to consume them in moderation. My request to the food industry here is the first thing, I am there with you on this. Even if I have to fight it out with the government or anybody for that matter. That we need to bust myths about food processing. In India, still there there are sections, there are organizations, there are societies which say that processed food is bad. Can I ask you a simple question? Are we eating paddy? Are we eating wheat grains, wheat kernels as they are? We eat atta. We cook chapatis out of atta, or we make noodles from semolina. So what is it that is not getting processed? Milk also is getting pasteurized. So everything that we consume is processed, largely processed, except for few fresh fruits and vegetables probably. So saying that every processed food is bad or it has high sugars, we're adding this and all. Yes, ultra processed foods for which even the definitions are not there, even with FSSAI also. So those foods have to be defined first. What is ultra processing? What are the nutrients that are getting lost? And you need processing because millets. No, we like crazy when when the International Year of Millets was announced. Everybody was after millets. I think now that buzz has settled down. Now people hardly talk about millets but that was a good system. There's a good stimulus, especially for the farmers, because farmers who were into the millet business, who were into the business of growing millets, made good buck because all the produce that they were producing was getting used by the processing industry. It was all picked up. There was hardly any loss, and still that's happening. There are still supply chain issues with millets, but millets have anti-nutritional components. So either you have to process that, whether it's temperature modeling or you go for wet grinding or you go for de-husking first, you have to remove the anti-nutritional compounds. Same is the case with soybean. Tomatoes have lycopene. The availability of lycopene increases when we process tomatoes, when we heat tomato juice. Though concentration might come down, but its bioavailability increases. And that's one thing which is very, very important. So don't go by what you see. It contains vitamins. What is the bioavailability of that particular vitamin in my body or the mineral in my body? I might be eating a lot of iron. But then, is that how much of the iron is getting absorbed? How much is that bioavailable for the function? That also has to be seen. And that is where I think the scientists or the academicians who are working in food and nutrition have a big role to play. Developing products is difficult, but may not be as difficult once you do the total analysis of bioavailability, bioaccessibility, and see how much of that is getting retained in the body. Nutraceuticals, uh, when FSSAI brought out the regulation on nutraceuticals, it was clearly to support the startups. It was clearly to support the food industry. But then, as I said, our country has a lot of unorganized trade going on. And I think there were a few problems with nutraceuticals because there's no price control on nutraceuticals as it is in pharma. Do you have NPPO? But then when I was at FSSA also, there were a few challenges that we're facing. But then now I think some of it is going to Sedesco, some of it will be retained by FSSAI. But again, if you look at the international export market, most of the nutraceutical products are with the food regulator. Because nutraceuticals are not being used for therapeutic purpose, they are largely for prophylactic purpose only. And I think there is a report which has come out, interministerial report, which is there on the website. I would request all of you to have a look at it. And you can, I don't know whether they have asked for stakeholders' comment or not, but you must respond to that. with your own views. For example, uh, if Mr. Prashant Nagre has come out with a wonderful product which is, plant-based vitamin D3, a very unique thing, first time in the country, maybe in the world. Now he wishes to have a capsule of this vitamin D3 or a pill of vitamin D3, right? Which the doctor, I mean, I don't need to go to the doctor to every time to say that to seek his prescription. You might say, fine, you have little you have deficiency of vitamin D, so you can take it as a routine. But then, if it has to go through the Cedesco route, the kind of problems that we would face are phenomenal. But if it remains with FSSAI, it'll be far easy for him to get a license for it. Now, what people would think is the intervention would be, why not to add this vitamin D3 into some lozenges or chocolates or confectionaries or some other product, so that, but you also have to look at the solubility of that. It is not a water soluble vitamin. So you need to have some amount of fat added to it to solubilize that. So just putting it in lozenges or candies will not serve the purpose. So that, there is a science behind everything that we do. So when I was talking about, is my time over? Okay, busting the myths. I think we need the industry, support of the industry, academics, research, everybody to come on board and create a wave about it, create a buzz about it, that processing helps in improving the shelf life, processing helps in improving the texture of the product. Levels have to be screened out. Now, another area which is of big concern is the biomarkers. FSSAI says that you should have this much of fruit content in a fruit juice or a fruit beverage. But how do we check that? How do I ensure that the sugars are not added? They were just part of the fruit. Suppose if I'm adding 20% of mango pulp, how much of sugar has gone from pulp and how much sugar is added into it? But eventually 100 grams would contain about 14 to 15% of sugars. And the fruit sugar is only about 3 to 3.5%. So we need to have methods, we need to have markers to assess the amount of sugars which are naturally present or amount of fruit which is naturally present in the beverage that we are getting. Same is the case with millets. People are claiming as millet products. This is millet cookies, this is millet kurkure, this is millet puff. How much of millet is there in that? Because there's no standards of FSSAI as far as the millet concentration is concerned. But even if the standards are set, you need a backup system to ensure that so much of millet is added into it. If you say 15% millet is essentially required, how do you check? The rest is cereals, because millet is also a cereal. It's also a grain. If I'm adding rice to it, adding wheat to it, and then adding, say 15% millets to a product and develop a product out of it. So how much of millet is there in the product? That also needs to be seen. So there are a lot of challenges, but I'll tell you, if you want to get into the export market, the best thing is to go with the traditional foods. You see how good Amul is doing, how good Haldiram is doing in overseas markets. India has a lot of traditional potential, and Dadima's therapies are coming back. Now we're talking about the ajwans, we're talking about the mulattis, we're talking about the mishris, we're talking about saffron, we're talking about haldi. So everything is coming back now. Now we hear people talking about, especially producing food with low glycemic index. You cook rice, put that in refrigerator, take it out, reheat it, glycemic index comes down. Potatoes, if they are boiled, if the sugar content is less. So this is what even the Dadima used to tell us. कि sugar कम होता है ऐसे करते हैं तो. She may not be knowing what is the principle behind it. She wouldn't have started all the the retrogradation of starch that takes place. She knew about it. So science is very important. The science behind food development and new product development. So please don't go for shortcuts. Have a clear-cut strategy that NPD will take its own time. You have to do a life cycle assessment of it. Get it thoroughly tested for nutritional components, for bioavailability, then launch a product. It will be a successful model. And at NIFTM, we are there to support you. We got 5 pilot plants. We got state-of-art laboratory, the only lab in the country among all the R&D institutes which is notified as a primary and referral lab. We have incubation center called NTBAF. We have already supported 42 incubators, startups who incubated with us, and 17 of the incubators startups have been financially also supported by us through some source or the other. So we're there with you. We have got all the things that you need, the pilot plants and the technical mentorship that you need, and even the branding and how to move to the market. So again, at the end, I would say that in case if we have to make our country strong, if we want to, achieve the dream of Viksit Bharat by 2047, we all have to be very true to ourselves. Don't get into any unethical practice. Be true to yourself. Be ethical in whatever you're doing. And it's important that all of us come on board. Institutes cannot work without industry, and industry also should think that this these institutes are meant for R&D. These institutes are meant for academics. They are going to help us out in new product development. They are going to help us out in doing the availability studies, the testing of nutritional components, and then further taking the product to the market. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And in case if you would like to connect with me at some stage, I'll be available around. So thank you very much, organizers, and thanks everyone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Oberoi, for that wonderful enlightenment that we had. And thank you so much for opening the session as well. And we are indeed, deeply and humbled by his presence. And also, thank you so much for explaining and for sharing with us the wonderful work that NIFTM is doing for this entire industry. And now, I would like to call on stage Mr. Vikram Kelkar, Managing Director from 𝐊𝐮𝐧𝐝𝐢𝐚 Nutrition, and Mr. Prasant Nagre, Managing Director from Fermenta Biotech, to kindly come on stage and felicitate Dr. Oberoi. Please. Big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, to Dr. Harinder Singh Oberoi, Director NIFTM, our chief guest and the opening keynote on day one, for that wonderful session and for sharing his thoughts and his experience and knowledge for the betterment of the food, beverage, dairy and nutrition industry. Thank you so much, Dr. Oberoi. Deeply, deeply honored to have your presence here, sir.